Kelly back with us. Welcome back, Kelly. And I think we're going to get into some actual case studies now, some data, some information from some case studies, and I'll turn it back to you and Chris for that section.
Thank you, Steve. I'm just gonna, so what I've done over the last 2 years here working is looking at different business models. At the end result, we are a B2B model. So the intent is we want to make sure that the proper technicians, we're supporting the fitters and areas of expertise here. And in these case models, we want you taking care of the end consumer within your designated regions and so forth. So we're more of a business to business model, and we want to definitely make sure we support that, whether it's moving customers and so forth. But what I've done is we've had a lot of feedback from people we've been working with, and there's 2 case studies that I really want to bring forward to talk about. So right now you should actually see in front of you one of the case studies, number 8. Now, in this case study, what we were focused on is how the bike fitter can use this to bring back more of their customers and re-engage with them more frequently. Traditionally, from what we've found from the data is a triathlete or a performance cyclist, they often will only come to their fitter for a couple reasons. A, they buy new equipment, or B, they have an injury they're trying to work through. So they might only actually come to their fitter once every 2 years, if they're lucky, maybe once a year. So this has been most of the feedback there. And then in this case study, what we did is we focused specifically on the Garmin Aero system, because that is the comparable that a lot of the businesses we're using. So a lot of the fitters that we've met have access to this type of system, and it looks like it's more prevalent in Europe, velodrome-based systems, than in North America. So as we were going down this, outside of the operational savings and the no limits on location, which is the other factor that comes into play, the system that we have obviously gives you a lot of value. You're not limited to accessing a velodrome. You can do it literally in your backyard, so it brings value there. The other part of this is that it's meant to be a value add to your existing fit. We know that the stationary bike that you guys are using, whether it's Retool or STT and so forth, that you are honing in on a best performance fit related specifically to the customer. So in this case study, and we will be talking about pricing after, so a little bit of that tease out there that's happening. We have seen that A, the operational costs are substantially reduced, as well as B, it's brought in substantial revenue potentials. So upwards of $65,000 a year for a lot of the fitters that were bringing the Aero Fit, performance fit into place. What I'm going to do is I'm actually going to move right into the thick of things with the end results. So on the right here, you're going to see the Garmin TES Aero system. Now, generally speaking, again, I'm pulling from North America here, but we were seeing that about a 2-hour fit that they were charging approximately $800. Now, in this situation, you have the expense of the immediate facility, as well as Garmin in North America was charging a licensing fee access. So what was happening is the end takeaway was about $345 in revenue per customer over that 2-hour period, with a net or with a gross sale of approximately $800. With AeroLab kind of running the same fundamentals, you can do a better valued offering at $600 instead of $400 per hour. You can give a better value there, but your general expenses at that moment, your fixed expenses are not applicable. So for example, you don't need to schedule and work around velodrome accessing, which could be limited due to events that are going on. So you don't have that rental fee and licensing fee and so forth. So generally speaking, the overall profit is higher for you, and in regards to that. Now, I'm going to tease this out right now, is that at the end result, with our system is a leased unit, okay? You don't purchase it. The leased unit, literally, depending on what term you pick, which we'll talk about a little later on here, we get into it, whether it's a 3, a 6-month, or a 1-year lease, and you would select your lease based off of basically where you live. If you're Calgary here, you're doing maximum 6. If you're living in Florida, you're probably doing a year. California, so based off of where you live and your customers. We're basically, the net result is anywhere from taking care of 6 customers to 9 or 10 customers in an entire year. You've actually covered your entire cost. So it's very easy entry point. You're not highly leveraged in the lease, which allows for that flexibility and that modeling. So the net result is based off of 100 tests, you can generate upwards of $55,000 in revenue here, where in comparison, you are looking at just a little under 30,000 with a Garmin-based system. And then taking into consideration the limitations, A, do you have access to a velodrome? B, the equipment and so forth and so on. And can you actually have full access? Because often the velodromes are used for events and so forth, and you might not have carte blanche to it based off of your customer schedule. The other thing that I'm not showing in this business case, which we recently started noticing good value, is that fitters are actually looking at leasing 2 or 3 units. And again, going back to the way we were setting up our testing, we would have the tent, we'd have a mechanic. And the nice thing is by having 2 systems there, you could actually be sending another rider out, which was already, maybe you were setting up a set of wheels and so forth for that other rider, doing some slight changes. And so you're actually kind of sending a rider out and working with another rider. So you're actually doubling up your potential revenues in this situation. So that has been very, very valuable feedback with a lot of them. So generally speaking, high revenue potentials on a low investment point, which again, I'll be talking about that in a little later in this event. But so that's the first showcase, or the business case from a business model, general comparison to a Garmin-based system in your revenue potentials. The other, let's see if I can get this. There we go. Oh no, now it's playing funky with me. Literally a minute ago, it was working perfect. The second case study, which I really found this one valuable, is that some fitters were looking at it from 2 standpoints. One was having a second support person. So maybe they were the key fitter. They're always working with customers, and then they had in the fit studio, and then they had a secondary. They had customers that wanted to also go out onto site. So they would bring in support staff. Again, feeding back to that other model is that if you have staff that maybe isn't working full time, you can now offset a bit of that cost where they're generating revenue for you at the bottom to the bottom line. But in this case study, this was specific to a fitter that had was selling product. And what I liked in this case study business model is they were actually building a small trailer. I think it was a 6 by 5 by 4 or whatever. But within this trailer, they were actually bringing in their high valued products. So for example, tires, aero helmets, different products that customers wanted to test, necessarily didn't necessarily believe basically the marketing. And for example, deep dish wheels are a good example. And so what they were doing is they were working with their supplier, and they were actually putting demo products into the trailer, and then they were bringing it out onto site and almost having a showcase showroom where the customers could get a bit of an aero fit, but now play with their equipment, or equipment they're entertaining and investing in. And what I really liked about one of the examples that a retailer did is that in North America, a lot of the retailers are no longer stocking inventory on their higher ticket items, the aero helmets, the wheels and so forth, and they actually tie it into their online sales. So what they were doing is they were actually using the iPad to place the order for the product right there in the moment when the person was like, I've looked at the data, you're way faster with this helmet. Would you like me to place an order for you? Do you want that sent to your house, or do you want it sent to the shop and you can pick it up? So A, they didn't have to stock inventory, which is a CapEx. And then B, they were dealing with a customer at the moment where they're like, yeah, those wheels were really fast. I really liked it. I was stable and I'm faster. So you're able to custom validate for somebody. You're definitively giving them feedback, and they were generating sales more on the emotion instead of the person walking away all the time. And this is, and thinking whether they can afford it. Hugely impactful for that the person getting into triathlon, getting into road racing and so forth, as well as, kind of getting that investment. And we know triathletes and people getting into TT and so forth, they start investing heavily in their equipment. And so it was a great capture moment. So I really found that this case study increased their sales from 19 to 45% on items. They didn't have to stock it and have their investment out. So, and we see it all the time. They buy a bunch of wheels in the early spring, and at the end of the season, they're stuck with that inventory and they're blowing out the price. So everybody buys it then. So you really tied up a lot of investment capital. And that case study has been very, very effective. I really like that business model. It's very repeatable in a lot of cases. So this was a bit of a dual one, having an employee working. And in this case also, we didn't talk too much about it, but with the dual sensor system, what was happening is Fit Studios were starting to work with clubs and teams and so forth and saying, hey, on Saturday, we're going to be at X location. You guys are invited out, because they know that they could facilitate maybe 15, 20 riders, and they would bring out their equipment and so forth so they could do kind of a double hit. A, you get a discount at $400 with the club. You're going to get a certain amount of fit time. And B, we're bringing out some of our products that may be of interest to you. So real great revenue generating creativity going on here, and really starting to fight against the online discounting systems, which a lot of companies need to start getting creative. Retailers, fitters, and so forth need to get creative in fighting that type of challenges that are in front of them that aren't going to change, let's be honest. So it brought a lot of good value. I don't know, is there anything, Chris, that I might have missed?
No, I think you covered a good range there. So
the case studies, we're going to have them available. We're sending some stuff out after. You can read into it. I didn't want to read through them verbatim, but I think the key was to get that messaging across of good business structure for it, for generating revenue on the investment.
So I guess the high level message here is particularly for retailers, and this is very applicable, to them. And the game has changed dramatically. I mean, COVID-19 availability, having product in store, you touched on it, that model of buying a whole bunch of stuff, or whatever that stuff is, wheels, helmets, tires, et cetera, at the beginning of the year, and then trying to, sell them through the year, is kind of fading away. Yep. And I'm guessing here, with this model, let's talk helmets, for example. So you're testing a whole bunch of helmets, with a rider, and then that rider finds out that this particular Louis Garneau helmet, is the best helmet for them. So now they're not haggling over price or anything. They're coming back to the retailer and saying, I need this particular Louis Garneau helmet, and they're buying it at full margin.
Yeah, and that's exactly it. Now it's not a price game, because you're totally right. They're shopping online, that type of thing, and looking to save $50. Here, they're excited. You've invested time in them. They're like, man, I love that helmet. Thank you very much. So you also get that personal relationship. And so they start tying that value of coming back through. And, and I'm going to talk about a test that we did with a pro athlete. And this was, I thought, very impactful. So they were a sponsored, specialized pro athlete. They had done wind tunnel testing at specialized facility, and they had the two helmets. They basically had the snub nose and the long tail. They were told that the snub nose style was better for them. Well, during our testing with them, we did a slight modification, and it ended up that with the modification, they had substantial watt savings within that, and it was a modification to the older style helmet. So again, what we've really learned is that even though they market to it and they have to do it, there isn't a silver bullet product. We've tested a ton of wheels, tires, helmets, glasses, everything. And they actually are very rider dependent. And so that's the other thing that really is going to, I think, is going to change a lot of things. And we had talked about this prior, Steve, in the previous one, is we're going to start seeing some products customizing in the near future over the next couple of years, where there's custom solutions for a rider specific body type.
Right.